Hello everyone, my name is Alicia and I'm going to talk about age in second language acquisition. Before starting, I would like to ask you something. Do you think age is a boundary in second language acquisition? You might have thought it is, and that the older someone is, the more difficulties they will find when learning a second language. But let's see what research can say about it. It is a fact that if a person isn't exposed to language in their first years of life, they won't be able to acquire the ability to speak. However, whereas this is key for the development of the first language, there isn't a clear evidence that actually shows that there is only one period in life in which a second language can be acquired. This is what is known in linguistics as the critical and sensitive period, and it is a possibility that due to certain changes in the brain after childhood, learning a language might be hard and probably even unsuccessful. But that statement contradicts very successful cases of late second language learners who have reached such a high level in their second language that some even pass as a native speaker. The truth is that after 10 months of learning a second language, children become faster than older learners. Thus, some could say that younger learners are better than the older ones, but that doesn't happen when language exposure takes place only in the time of instruction, and being a child isn't a key for success in many cases. So, do we really have a critical second language acquisition period? Continuing with such hypotheses, late researchers have focused on trying to determine whether it is the morphosyntax what has a critical period in terms of age. Recent findings have shown that after puberty, grammatical intuition starts declining. But these studies are still in an early stage and should not be hastily considered. In terms of phonology, as it is carried out by actual muscles and physical factors, a critical period to acquire native-like phonology might be more evident. This does not mean, however, that after a critical period it will be impossible to sound like a native. It only means that maybe learners will need more effort and motivation to reach native likeness. There is also a possibility that the age effect is not explained as a biological factor, but rather as how the skills are learned, how the socio-educational and motivational context influences, and how the first language interferes in the second language learning process. Also, monolingual and bilingual attainment cannot be compared in terms of language proficiency, as it is impossible for a bilingual to become monolingual. In conclusion, knowing the age effect when learning a second language, it's important to be aware of how differently age can influence the learning process. But the age does not seem to determine the success or failure of the second language acquisition.
Hello, it's César and I'm going to speak about aptitude. Language aptitude is usually thought to be a general ability to learn languages. In other words, it makes a difference in how fast and how well we learn as individuals. Having this in mind, let's get down to the nitty-gritty and make clear a couple of concepts in order to understand aptitude. Aptitude in itself is a construct mostly cognitive. That means it's an hypothetical entity difficult to define and mostly related to knowledge or intelligence. Back in the day, psychologists interested in individual differences used to focus on cognition, connection, and affect. However, nowadays, studies are increasing towards aptitude, motivation, and other sources of differences in L2 learning. It's also important to mention the use of correlations by researchers due to the psychological background of the subjects. Correlations are basically the connection between two scores interrelated. The issue concerning the correlational method is that research can become faceless. That would mean setting aside individual abilities to learn foreign language. And in fact, that is what has happened through the years. There has been much more effort given to developing tests to measure L2 aptitude and to explain the construct in itself. At this point, we find the MLAT, a predictive test of language learning rate based on three cognitive abilities: grammatical sensitivity, meaning the facility to recognize the function of linguistic parts in wholes; phonetic coding ability, meaning the ability to identify and connect sounds; and finally, memory capacity, meaning a good memory capacity. We can state that this test remains completely popular, although not studying the adult learner's differential potential, as we mentioned before. There is a debate concerning L2 aptitude and intelligence based on Marjorie West's studies, where she states that highest MLAT scores were attached to higher intelligence scores. After that, she can concluded that they partly overlap. Nevertheless, even if they overlap, they can be considered and studied on their own. Another interesting researching point is the relation between L1 and L2 learning difficulties. In many cases, a difficulty in learning an L2 comes from a difficulty in L1. So, foreign language aptitude is related to phonological awareness, which is related to memory. Apparently, memory affects aptitude in a weird way. During the beginning of learning it, it helps vocabulary learning, whilst during the later process, it helps grammar learning. In addition, we can also conclude that memory may be an advantage in the long term regarding learning from interactions. It will help learners to acquire more data and to consolidate it. In terms of the relation between aptitude and age, aptitude will matter gradually more as the starting age is older due to less exposure to natural input. To sum up, we could say that aptitude is a mixture of analytical abilities and memory abilities, although further research is needed. According to Shekan and Robinson, it is a compendium of L2 cognitive capacities. But what's the future of it? Later studies suggest the idea of approaching language instruction from different aptitude profiles, and more specifically, diagnosing the areas where individuals need external help.
Hello, I'm Caroline and I'm going to explain the power of motivation in a class. The meaning of the motivation is a complex set of constructs, psychological perceptions, and attitudes. In one word, could be called integrativeness. It's a genuine interest in learning the second language to come closer to the other language community. So, one question about the motivation would be, why do people want to adopt another culture? Because there's something in their own don't like, doesn't name them. It's about someone that wants to change something about their daily life, daily routine, knowing more cultures or languages or more people. So I will explain fastly the most important aspects about motivation that are related with the quantity of effort. If it's higher, more motivation. The quantity of enjoyment, higher, more motivation. And the quantity of investment of time. Also, we can say that the international posture, I mean, the international interest of someone to travel, to search a job abroad, is something that gives motivation to the student. And for the last, I will explain the antecedent. Before having motivation, it's important to know about orientations of the student for that language. It could be instrumental, knowledge, travel, friendship, and integrative. Also, we can say that social support is important for the student for being more motivated to know other languages, like parents, siblings, peers, and teachers. At the end, to have an intergroup contact at an ethno-vitality and a self-confidence could be three important things to have a student motivated to study more and to have better results. And that's all. Thank you.